Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today we are honored to have on a great guest. Our guest is Daniel Sheehan of the New Paradigm Institute, which people may be familiar with nowadays. He's been involved in historic legal cases in the United States, such as the Pentagon Papers, the Watergate case, and many more. And people, that are familiar with UFOs and the UFO history, Daniel was involved with assisting the great and late Dr. John Mack at Harvard when they were, trying to axe him basically, and the Disclosure Project. So and with Jimmy Carter's administration. So welcome, Daniel.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you're kind of historically involved in the UFO subject, and people may have heard our last interview. If they didn't, they can always go back and listen to that. But you've also been involved with advising and representing Luis Elizondo. Is that correct?
That's right. I've been his attorney since like 2020.
Yeah. So you know, people watching and listening may be familiar with the UAP Disclosure Act and what has happened to that. Basically, most of the language was rejected. The last time that you were on, we were speaking a week before the language was gutted or rejected. So, for people listening, what was maintained of that language from the UAP
Well,
Disclosure Act?
well, extremely importantly, Jim, the major command coming from Congress demanding that the 6 military services of our United States, our 18 intelligence agencies, and all 32 of our United States Defense Department agencies are all commanded now, as of last December 22nd, to start gathering together all of the information that they have about UFOs, basically, and any extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence that are responsible for the UFO phenomenon, gathering all of that together into a digital format with indexing and stuff, and standing ready as of October 18th of this year to be able to be ready to hand over as soon as possible, as the language states now, all of that information to the National Archives. And that information will thereafter be made available to the proper intelligence committees of both the House and the Senate. That's an extraordinarily important provision that has been retained in the original act. The original act that was passed by the Senate had a much more kind of fulsome enforcement system, was much more aggressive and detailed, and very importantly, it called for the establishment of an independent panel that was going to be reviewing all of this information and choosing to make it available to the whole world, as soon as possible at that stage. And that portion has been taken out, and other portions of the bill were taken out by the House, more correctly, by a tiny handful of individuals in the House who happen to have very powerful positions, such as chairing the House Intelligence Committee and chairing the House Armed Services Committee and the Speaker of the House, those 3 individuals. But of the 435 members of the House of Representatives, probably 430 of them all supported the Senate bill, which 97 of the 100 senators had all supported, including all 17 of the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So the portion that was salvaged was this extraordinarily important command to all of these agencies of the executive branch to gather all this information and have it all fully prepared for delivery as of October 18th of this coming fall. So that's still in place, and that's supposed to be being undertaken as we speak.
And so that I guess that information will not yet be available to the public at that time, correct?
Well, actually, the bill provides for the information, all the information that is 25 years old or more. It has to be prepared to be potentially released to the public right away. But the problem with the remaining bill is that the House of Representatives, these three people, particularly in the House of Representatives, have given the authority to the existing heads of those military services and intelligence agencies and Defense Department agencies to make the initial decision as to what is going to be released to the public or not. And those are the same people that have been actively concealing this, for 80 years. So that's not particularly reassuring. And so that the United States Senate, they had preferred the 64-page bill to this more limited 24-page bill that got approved by the House. That the advocates of the 64-page original bill, that is Senator Schumer, the majority leader, Mike Rounds, both the majority and minority chair and co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is Mark Warner of Virginia and Marco Rubio of Florida, the Republican and Democrat, respectively, are committed to coming back at this issue and coming forward and reasserting a substantial portion of the original demands that were made by the Senate, last year. So that process is underway right now too, as we sit here to meet today.
Yeah, and a few people have. I think Representative Garcia had proposed new language recently. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the Garcia, the congressman from Long Beach here in California, he put forth a partial bill in the House of Representatives, basically crafted to re-insisting upon establishing an independent board of review. He selected a portion of the Senate bill that had been passed by the Senate last year, and he attempted to reintroduce it into the House of Representatives, calling for the nomination of a 9-member panel that would receive the information from the intelligence agencies and the defense agencies, and that panel would have the authority to make the decision as to what information was to be released right away to the public, supplanting the ability of the heads of the military and intelligence and defense agencies from being able to make that decision. But the fact of the matter is, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, refused to allow that bill to be brought to the floor.
Yeah, so I mean, as everything is going now, I guess there is there's an idea or there's a proposal for new language that's going to be reinserted soon. Is that correct?
Yes, there's been some preliminary language that's been developed by the United States Senate as of June 12th, but there's more language that is being prepared right now. The people that were involved in drafting the original bill last year for the Senate are actively engaged in restructuring and relanguaging some of that, primarily to make it even stronger than it was last year. And that language is going to be inserted into the bill that is going to be eventually sent over to the House side. But the Senate is still working out some of those particular details. At the same time, there are a number of individual bills that are still being proposed over on the House side to take pieces of the legislation and try to get that passed by the House. For example, Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, has solicited us at the New Paradigm Institute to prepare a much more muscled up, enhanced UFO whistleblower protection statute. which was part of the Senate bill last year that was not included by the House. But the Burchett is interested in introducing this as a standalone piece of legislation, potentially before the whatever whistleblower provisions are going to be put in to the National Defense Authorization Act. Is for people to understand simply that the tactic that has been adopted by the Senate is to have all of the comprehensive parts of the UFO issue dealt with in a specific subsection that is going to be inserted into the much larger National Defense Authorization Act, which is passed every year around December 21st. That's the tactic that has been adopted by the Senate. So the Senate is going to be proposing that this comprehensive multi-part section of the Senate bill be put into the National Defense Authorization Act because there's a special rule with regard to the National Defense Authorization Act, and that is that once the language has been agreed upon in the National Defense Authorization Act by some key committees in the House and Senate, there's no more amendments that are allowed, and that bill has to be voted for in its entirety, either an up or down vote. It's a tactic that's been adopted by the supporters of military funding to make certain that the bill gets passed every year to continue to fund the military and intelligence agencies, but also to keep the individual members of Congress from hanging, Christmas tree ornaments on the bill forever, and making it a terribly difficult process. So it's kind of an esoteric aspect of this whole UFO issue. But the bottom line is that the ultimate decisions regarding exactly what position Congress is going to take on the UFO issue this year, it will not be finally determined until around December 21st. But there's a lot of steps that are being taken leading up to that right now. The first one of which is the United States Senate attempting to finalize its comprehensive language that are going to be dealing with several different major aspects of the UFO issue. For example, strengthening the protection to UFO whistleblowers, because the reality is that right now at the present time, those who have possession of the most sensitive information and the most important information regarding the UFO phenomenon and the existence of extraterrestrial life, those people are still afraid of coming forward. They're convinced that the present scheme of whistleblower protection legislation does not adequately protect them against the kind of retribution that they believe that they would experience if they try to come forward and reveal the information they know to Congress. So that's a particular piece that needs to get addressed. We have to substantially strengthen the protection of people specifically intending to reveal UFO and ET related information to Congress, because they fear that the degree of attachment that the deep state, the national security state, has to keeping this information secret is so intense that great lengths will be gone to by the deep state and the so-called legacy group to retaliate against anybody who reveals the really detailed, deepest information about this. So that step has to be undertaken by the Senate to determine how strong a set of protections they're going to give, potentially uniquely, to UFO whistleblowers, as distinct from general whistleblowers throughout the government. And there's another major issue that's arisen, as you know, this question as to what steps are going to be taken by the government to insist that any of the technology that's been recovered by the government has to belong to the government, has to remain in the hands of the collective community here, rather than fall into the hands of any private aerospace corporation that may have been contracted to work with one or more of the vehicles that have been recovered, to try to determine what the technology is and whether or not we can successfully back engineer it. It turns out that a number of these aerospace corporations have their lawyers, and they have insisted that they be allowed to have private patents on the technology and to own the technology and make the United States government have to pay for it in any use of it throughout the future. That's a major stumbling block because these private aerospace corporations have, reached out to and influenced those, for example, 3 people over in the House of Representatives who are blocking the full passage of the Senate bill. That, for example, Michael Rogers, who is the Republican chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, is from the 2nd Congressional District down in Alabama, which is in Huntsville, which is right next to the Redstone rocket range, where they're attempting to back engineer some of this technology to weaponize it so that it can be used to engine much more rapid delivery systems for our nuclear weapons. And those private corporations there in Huntsville are giving money to Rogers for his campaign. Rogers is his major contributors, for example, are Lockheed Martin, that possess some of this technology, that they've been given some of this technology for the purposes solely and exclusively of helping to analyze it by the government. But they're insisting now that they've somehow acquired the right to get a patent on this and have private ownership of this technology.
So
that whole issue has been a major debate point inside the new legislation.
So I mean, that's basically implying that they're saying that they have it.
They do have it,
but for them to try to even, yeah, for sure. So, but for them to try to make that bargain, it's an admission, right? Of sorts.
No, what they're technically saying is, look, we're not, for example, Lockheed Martin and places like Radiance Technology and other of these aerospace corporations are saying, look, we're just adamantly objecting to a statute that insists that the United States government would own any of the UFO.
The eminent domain.
Without admitting we've got it. They're just pretending there's this kind of general abstract objection to the whole concept of eminent domain, which has existed ever since the founding of the country. It's an integral aspect of the Fifth Amendment, granting to the federal government the right to exercise the authority of eminent domain to take into custody on behalf of the collective people certain property and other things that are necessary for the public interest. That's always existed. And therefore, for them to try to assert that all of a sudden they've gotten this major commitment against eminent domain in general is not at all convincing. And when they're confronted and say, look, why are you so upset about eminent domain being exercised with regard to UFO technology if you don't have any, they just refuse to answer. But we know they've got the technology. We know Lockheed Martin's got the technology. We know that there are other aerospace corporations that are negotiating with Lockheed Martin, as though Lockheed Martin were the actual possessors of this information and technology. Whereas that we at the New Paradigm Institute and others throughout the community maintain that this technology should be available for everybody, not just be privately owned by one or more aerospace corporations.
Right. And some of what you shared there is a little reminiscent of the Wilson Davis memo, where Eric Davis is interviewing Vice Admiral Tom Wilson, and he ends up meeting with the corporate lawyer, program manager, and the security officer.
Almost certainly Ben Rice at the Lockheed Martin. Yeah, that's who you met with, I think.
Yeah, and so that's extremely fascinating. And I mean, again, we see the same pattern. And they discussed they're almost found out in an audit, and that's why they have to operate in this manner. But Grush had mentioned that he had cooperative and hostile witnesses. Was the gentleman that you just mentioned, was he one of the witnesses, or was Vice Admiral
Ben Rice is dead now.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was thinking of the other guy who was from the WikiLeaks. Um, uh, Vice Admiral Tom Wilson was,
Wilson is there. Yeah, Wilson is knowledgeable about this.
but
And
is he one of the either cooperative or hostile witnesses?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that.
All right, and because you also mentioned somebody had hands on a craft, like those type of witnesses are
Yeah,
participating, right?
that's right.
Um,
Well, the
they want to, right?
they want to, but they're deeply afraid because they're convinced. For example, we've had direct face-to-face meetings with Mark Warner, who's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He wants to have us and others provide to him, you know, people who've absolutely laid their hands on an extraterrestrial spacecraft in a context and in a setting that makes it absolutely indisputable that that's what this craft is. And those are the people that are the most frightened about coming forward because they believe that the present schematic of witness protection, whistleblower protection statutes that are in place don't really protect them against the kind of retaliation that they're sure that they would experience, which ranges all the way from the denial of future promotions to the potential termination of their security clearances, at least the review of their security clearances, which puts them into limbo, and therefore they can't be employed in any kind of security program. All the way up to the fact that with regard to this particular issue, with regard to the UFO issue itself, and the whole issue of their knowledge of the existence of this extraterrestrial civilization, that there's this legacy group have been in their own mind authorized to deploy lethal force to protect the secret, to protect the territory where the UFO craft are kept, and where any of the UFO bodies or any live extraterrestrial beings actually are harbored, that they are allowed to use lethal force to protect those facilities. And the members of this legacy group have interpreted this as allowing them to deploy lethal force even off property. They don't have to confine the use of lethal force to protect just the physical location, that they're allowed to deploy lethal force to murder anyone who attempts to reveal the secret in violation of their security clearance. And so that the people that possess that immediate firsthand information have reason to be extraordinarily concerned about their personal safety. And so that they're insisting that we provide to them much more fulsome and muscled up protections before they're willing to be made public.
Yeah, and I do want to get to some of the things that you mentioned there in regards to retaliation, but I also did want to bring up another name who may be involved with some of this legacy information, or somebody who, there's a story of an individual, General John Sheehan, who allegedly touched a craft.
Good job. Right. Well, your question is what?
Is he one of these witnesses?
I'm not at liberty to discuss the identities of the particular witnesses.
Yeah, but these individuals, they're how far have they been able to go so far before the extended protections are made available?
Well, some of the people who have almost firsthand knowledge and who have been able to tell members of the Senate Intelligence Committee who have the adequate clearances, who the people are who have this firsthand information, have been people who have almost firsthand knowledge, but they're not the people with the firsthand knowledge. Some of the people with the firsthand knowledge are willing to talk off the record. They're making proffers, which is kind of a legal concept. they could make a hypothetical proffer of information to the Senate Intelligence Committee people with the proper clearances, but they haven't done it yet because they've not been provided with what they view to be the adequate protections. This is a standard procedure that is available inside the Justice Department, for example, whereby the Justice Department can not only grant either use immunity, which means that or transactional immunity, so that there can be absolutely no legal steps taken against them for the activity that they've engaged in. And also they could be given the authority to be put into the witness protection program and provided actual physical security team to protect them against violent acts. That there's a range of protections that are available inside the present system. And the question is, can those be provided to these people who have the firsthand knowledge, and will that satisfy them? Do they believe that the government, for example, the Justice Department, the United States Marshal Service, are they adequately prepared to protect them against the kind of retribution that might be taken against them by the field forces of this legacy group? Because it's important to understand that our country has, since the passage of the National Security Act of 1947, has actually developed programs that authorize the use of lethal force outside of the United States boundaries. And that they allow, we've now seen it manifested by the actual, directing of manned missile strikes against individuals to murder them and kill them that they view to be enemies of the state. It's taken place in specific regard to the terrorist activities of the Middle Eastern Islamic terrorists, that they've been targeted and assassinated by the United States, and that they use these deadly drone attacks to murder them, blow up their cars with their full family in them, blow up their entire houses with their families in them, and so that they believe that they've been authorized to do that kind of activity abroad. And the problem is that the people in the legacy group believe that they've been authorized to use that kind of force stateside here inside our country, and to use it against American citizens. If in fact they were to threaten to betray their security clearances that they've taken to keep this ultimate secret, and so that the people who have the most firsthand knowledge about this are understandably fearful that the other more prosaic law enforcement agencies like the Justice Department, FBI, even the U.S. Marshal Service, and the Secret Service are not actually capable of protecting them effectively against these other people, because they are so deeply devoted to keeping this secret. That's the problem that we're having right now, or the challenge that we have. So our New Paradigm Institute is in the process of crafting a much more strengthened whistleblower protection system for the people, designed to free them up from this fear, to see if they'll come forward and talk about this. But it raises an additional issue over and above the whistleblower protection, the issue of amnesty and potential use immunity or transactional immunity that they would be given to protect them against criminal or civil prosecution for conduct that they've engaged in as participants in the program in the past. So these are all things that we're engaged in attempting to design for them at the present time to make them available. The problem is, the challenge that we have is that the Senate might well be willing to pass these people over on the House side, these three individuals, this Michael Turner, who is the Republican head of the House Intelligence Committee, Michael Rogers, who is the Republican head of the House Armed Services Committee, and Michael Johnson, who is the President Speaker of the House of Representatives. The three of them have been prevailed upon by the private aerospace corporations to kill any effort to strengthen the whistleblower statute because they don't want this information made available. They want to continue to pretend that they don't have the UFO technology. They want to pretend that they don't know that there's this extraterrestrial civilization that is coming and going from our planet, that this is the deepest and darkest secret in the possession of our United States national security state, and that they believe that they are authorized to deploy lethal force to keep it secret.
And you've spoken to a number of these witnesses?
I'm not at liberty to discuss
All right.
that.
And just if you had to speculate, what exactly type of information might these individuals have? I mean, we're talking a lot about technology.
If I had to speculate, I don't have to speculate. So,
Okay.
I mean, so you say if I were to speculate, I don't speculate about that.
Okay. But what type of information do you think they have?
That's the same question, just by another means. I'm not at liberty to discuss the information that we discussed with him.
Yeah. They
I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm just saying that that other people are in a position where it might be okay for them to speculate, but I'm not in a position to be able to speculate because I
right.
have information that is in fact specific, and I'm not going to speculate about that.
Yeah. So what do you think people can realistically expect to occur in the next few months? I heard you mention that there may be another set of hearings.
Yes. No, I believe that, let me go down the list. I think people to a 99% level of certainty can expect to see much stronger language coming forward from the United States Senate Intelligence Committee that is going to be approved by the United States Senate Armed Services Committee. That's going to go to the floor of the Senate and going to be approved by the Senate to a 99% probability. And it's going to deal with this handful of specific issues: the strengthening of the whistleblower protection, the addressing of the eminent domain issue, dealing with these questions of amnesty for the people that are directly involved in the legacy group. There's going to be a series of these provisions in the bill, and that's to a 99% certainty. They can also be certain that information, that bill is going to be sent over to the House of Representatives. They can be certain that the same three people who are basically in the pocket of the private aerospace corporations, that Michael Turner, Michael Rogers, and Michael Johnson, that the three of them are going to do what they can do to strip out of the Senate bill things that the private aerospace corporation and the Central Intelligence Agency and the heads of the military services that are privy to this information don't want revealed, and they're going to mount an effort to take out the portions of the Senate passed bill, which generate a higher and higher probability that we're actually going to get the information out of them. So there is this dialectic that is going on right now between the people who want to have a genuine controlled disclosure program undertaken, which include the Senate Majority Leader Schumer, the head of the Democratic head of the Intelligence Committee, the Republican vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, the vice chairman. The key people in the Senate, plus 97 of the 100 senators, all want a controlled disclosure program initiated right now. And they want all of the information that is 25 years old or older to be revealed to the public right away. They want all of the information to be revealed over a planned course of action over the next 7-year period. They have actually proposed establishing a 9-person panel that would formulate what they call very specifically the UAP or UFO Controlled Disclosure Campaign Plan. I mean, it's that specific in the Senate that they've come to this resolution that they are demanding that that be done. It is these 3 people in the House that are blocking this from being passed on the House side. And as you know, both houses of our bicameral legislature have to approve a bill before it becomes law. We know that President Biden has been briefed on the Senate effort, that Chuck Schumer has talked with the president about this, that he supports this. Our New Paradigm Institute has mobilized a citizen movement around the country. Over 100,000 people have been contacted to get in touch with their congresspeople and with their senators to support this. And they've also been in communication with CNN for tonight's debate to try to insist that Jake Tapper, ask a question of both candidates about whether or not they would support the passage by the House of Representatives of the Senate bill that's already been passed by the Senate, because it's very specific, very concrete, very detailed, and that we know that President Biden is fully cognizant of what the provisions are that have been proposed, and he supported it originally. We know that former President Trump has been briefed on this issue. The problem is everybody knows about Trump, that he doesn't even pay half attention to the briefings that he gets. He doesn't read them. He doesn't pay attention to them. So, that he either is feigning ignorance on this, suggesting that he's just talked to a couple pilots, have indicated to him that they've seen these UFOs, but he says that he doesn't believe in them, that it's not his thing. That the fact is that people have attempted to brief him when he was president, but he just doesn't pay attention to these things. So we don't know exactly what his response is going to be if and when he's asked the question tonight. We know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be going on the internet after the public debate that's going to be televised on CNN. He's going to go on a program, which is, I think, therealdebate.com. And he's going to have the same exact questions that were posed to the 2 leading candidates posed to him. And he's going to answer those questions. And if we have succeeded through the New Paradigm Institute to get the questions asked by CNN of the candidates, of the 2 major candidates about the UFO issue and whether or not they support the Senate bill that's been passed, that question will be posed to Robert as well. And Robert Kennedy has already stated publicly that he would support the public revelation of this information. So we'll see what happens tonight.
Do you think, how important do you think it is who the president ends up being in regards to this process, the disclosure process, let's say?
Well, I think that it's, not being facetious, but it's extraordinarily important who the president is to almost everything that's going to be happening in the next 4 years, and it would, so that that with regard to President Biden is very predictable. what would be happening. Because if in a court, if he's elected, then the probabilities are well over 50% that the United States Senate is going to remain under Democratic control. And it's more than 51% probable, if he's elected, that the House of Representatives would be taken over by the Democratic Party, and that Michael Turner would be removed as the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee or the House Intelligence Committee, and Congressman Rogers would be removed as the head of the House Armed Services Committee, and the Speaker of the House, Michael Johnson, would be replaced. And so that then the Democratic Party would be in charge of both houses of Congress and the presidency. And then the Schumer bill, the Schumer-Rounds bill, would almost certainly be passed, because it would be allowed to get a floor vote in the House, and it would be passed. So that I would suggest that if that happens, if President Biden is reelected, that we will see the Senate bill passed into law by the Congress, by the House, in the next session of Congress that starts in 2025. If in fact Donald Trump is elected, my guess is that there's going to be a very serious disruption of everything with regard to the federal government. He has declared that he is going to be trying to replace, I think, 2/3 of all of the employees in the entire United States government. And he has asserted that he is going to attempt to reduce the entire functioning of the federal government in truly radical ways. That my guess is, not my guess, but my judgment is, would generate substantial disruption of not only all the intelligence agencies and all the Defense Department agencies, but virtually all of the executive branch agencies that would need to be participating in preparing for the release of this information. On the other hand, it's not at all clear that Donald Trump would actually exercise the judicious judgment to not release it just willy-nilly, without any controlled disclosure process, because he is unpredictable. And it's not at all clear what he would be willing to do. This is not addressed in the Project 2025 proposals that are being prepared by the Heritage Foundation, to be given to Trump in the event that he were to be elected. They don't address this. So we don't know what they're proposing that he do about this. So the bottom line is it would be very unpredictable as to what Trump might do if he were to be elected with regard to the UFO issue. But it would be part of such a chaotic administration that it would not be done, I think, in a very responsible way, one way or the other.
And an individual who seems to be knowledgeable recently has been more outspoken, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the significance of Colonel Carl Nell openly speaking about this subject.
And you'd like me to do what?
What's the significance of him coming forward?
That's extraordinarily important. I mean that Colonel Nell is an extraordinarily important, incredible person involved in this. He held a very major position inside the Pentagon task force assigned to address the UFO issue. He's extraordinarily knowledgeable. He's very responsible, and his coming forward on the SALT at that SALT conference in New York, where he stated unequivocally that based on the knowledge that he personally possesses, that there is zero level of uncertainty with regard to the proposition that we are in fact being visited by what he refers to as a non-human intelligence, which translates inside the discussions to be an extraterrestrial civilization, a highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but categorically non-human species that is responsible for the UFO phenomenon, and that he has told the world that there's zero chance that that's not true.
I mean, what makes you think that he has the kind of resolve to make that kind of statement?
What makes me think he has because
Yeah, like that,
that's right. I'm 100% certain he has the resolve to say it. He said it.
Yeah. But do you think he's like a secondhand witness, firsthand witness, in the sense that like
I'm not at liberty. I'm not at liberty to talk about that.
Yeah. He was mentioned in an article written by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal at the debrief, exactly when David Grush came forward.
That's right.
And a statement was taken.
That's the first time most anybody out in the public had ever been made aware of him and what his role was.
Right. And just out of curiosity, because I haven't heard much of him mentioned afterwards. There was another individual mentioned in that article that I'm not sure if you're aware of. So in that article on the debrief, where Carl Nell essentially came out, there was another individual that I have not heard much about since. It's self-admitted in the article, it's somewhat of a pseudonym, but his name is Jonathan Gray. Has he also been involved in this process?
Again, I'm not allowed to talk about Jonathan Gray.
Okay. A lot of you're making this difficult for me, Danny.
Well, I can tell you this, that I was much more forthcoming as a general rule, and I have been I won't say admonished. I'll say I have been informed that I needed to be much more discreet about what it was I was willing to talk about if I was going to continue to be provided the kind of information we need to function here at the New Paradigm Institute.
Yeah, understood. And so getting to individuals who have been out in the public now, at least their name, identities, and somewhat that have been involved allegedly with the UFO legacy programs, was an individual named Jason Sands.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah. So what was your thought on that situation?
That's another one. I'm not at liberty to talk about that.
Okay. Wow. All right. Then getting to the current state of Arrow,
Yes.
all domain anomaly resolution office. It's been really confusing for a lot of people. They put out their first volume of a historical report that's just Project Blue Book 2.0.
That's right.
And the former head of Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, has continued even after leaving to speak on behalf of Arrow in some sense, even loosely. What do you make of some of the statements that he's made when allegedly,
they're just false. I can say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, he in fact he was still there when they authored the report in which they said that they had been provided no information that supported any conclusion that there was any kind of a UFO crash retrieval program. And I testified personally to him at his request for me to come in to meet with him. And I was placed under oath, and he supervised my interrogation. in testimony. And I laid out in detail to him the information that I had seen in the classified portion of Project Blue Book of photographs showing a craft retrieval operation in full operation. And then I also gave him the name of other people that I had talked with that had personally been involved hands-on with the crash retrieval program, and referred him to them. And he apparently either did nothing at all to confirm it, or did nothing at all to try to verify it, and then came forward and allowed a report to be authored under his auspices, asserting falsely that they'd been provided no information to support the conclusion that there was a UFO crash retrieval program ever underway. So all you can say is that it's a continuation of the blatant cover-up that was going on, in Project Blue Book and others with the Condon Report, et cetera. And there should be no surprise since the Aero Office was established by Congress, still under the aegis of the Defense Department and the Director of National Intelligence. And these are the offices that have been deeply involved in not only concealing the information, but lying to Congress, asserting that there is no such program and they don't know what anybody's talking about, So that's all you can say. And of course, there's the lengthy, almost line by line refutation of the report that was done by Chris Mellon, who is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence under both the Bill Clinton administration and George W. Bush's administration. He just took the report apart, virtually line by line, pointing out the prevarications, the flat out lying, and the misrepresentations that were in the report that was submitted to Congress under the auspices of Kirkpatrick. So you can say that much.
Should people expect anything different with the new leadership of Aero?
I don't want to condemn the poor fellow, right out of the box, but I know I'm not expecting much more.
Correct. They made a pretty bad
They're
first impression.
They're under the authority of the very offices that have concealed the information, and supervise the threats that have been directed to other people to stop them from talking about it, and to insist that they continue to deny the validity of the phenomenon. So that you couldn't expect anything else reasonably. Now Congress, took that initial step to set up Aero, to give them a chance, to give the Department of Defense and the intelligence director a chance to act in good faith. They've now demonstrated that they don't intend to do so, and that's why it was so troublesome that the House of Representatives, altered the Senate bill. The Senate bill had was intended to establish an independent panel that was going to make the decisions as to what information should be made public, and what information might be submitted to the president for the president to determine whether or not he or she were to determine that it should be postponed, at least temporarily, to release it to the public. But the House of Representatives insisted upon putting the heads of each of the intelligence agencies and military services and defense departments in charge of making the decision as to what should be made public. There's not any doubt about what they're going to say. They've been commanded to gather it all together, but it's perfectly clear that they're going to assert that virtually all of it has to be kept secret, because they're the ones that have been keeping it secret all this time.
So you mentioned that there may be more hearings, and if there may be an individual firsthand kind of witness to UFO technology, right?
It's possible.
So
we know they exist. We know the witnesses exist. We know that with given proper protection, they're willing to come forward to talk to Congress, to the Senate Intelligence Committee at least. We know that, and we know that the Senator Warner, who chairs this Intelligence Committee, has indicated that that's the kind of witness that they want. And the bottom line is that we know that they're going to be coming forward with a reiteration of the Schumer-Rounds bill from 2023. It's referred to rather affectionately as Schumer-Rounds 2.0. Is going to be coming forward, and it would be perfectly logical that the hearing that Senator Gillibrand has been referencing, the Senate holding, would be held in conjunction with the finalization of that language and the sending of that language over to the House. So that would be logically going to occur in about 1 month, around the 26th, 27th of July.
So,
but they haven't scheduled it yet.
say that does occur, right? And there's a super credible firsthand witness that comes forward. Somebody, I mean, again, like David Grush, this guy's credentials are impeccable. But what is to keep, say, that hearing and that witness's testimony? Because we seen what happened with David Grush, right? I mean, you would have thought that would have been it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To some extent, obviously not entirely, but what's to say that this witness comes forward and it's just not, a kind of the same thing happens as David Grush, where it just becomes a controversy.
Well, it wasn't. You'll notice that with Grush, it wasn't that people, I mean, reasonable people, asserted that he was not credible. What they were saying is that he wasn't professing to have firsthand, immediate personal knowledge of this. It was kind of a lawyer-like trick, that they were saying it was basically hearsay, his testimony. But if in fact a person, hypothetically, were to be presented in a United States Senate hearing under oath and testified to their own personal, firsthand, immediate experience of being in the presence of and having hands-on knowledge of the possession of an extraterrestrial non-human spacecraft by our government, that 95% of the arguments that were made or raised with regard to Grush's testimony would be eliminated. And I know they'd be eliminated in the minds of the senators and congressmen. But the fact of the matter is, David Grush provided the names and details of people who did know, had firsthand information. That the knowledge of those people is in the hands of the Senate Intelligence Committee as we speak.
And of course, we know that in the UAP Disclosure Act, I guess that this subpoena power was taken away, right?
That's
was taken out of the language, which would have been incredibly useful.
That's right.
That circumstance.
That is exactly right. But you'll note that in the act, I mean, it may be a little esoteric information, but it's important. In the act itself, the Senate bill passed by the Senate virtually unanimously provided for the authority of the panel that was to be established, this records review panel, to have the power to apply to the Justice Department, to ask the Justice Department to go to, and it authorized the Justice Department to go to a federal district court and present their evidence as to why they had grounds for believing that there was a person who had the particular documents or evidence that they were seeking, and ask the federal district court to actually issue a judicial subpoena, which would virtually amount to a grand jury subpoena. So that it wasn't technically that the that the review panel itself had the authority to issue the subpoena. And it wasn't that the Justice Department all by itself had any authority to issue a subpoena, an investigative subpoena. It was investing the three of them together. Interestingly enough, the presidentially appointed panel, the Justice Department in the executive branch, the Congress asking for it, the legislative branch involved, and bringing the judicial branch of the federal government into the decision, so that we would have legislative, executive branch, and judicial branch agreement to issue a particular subpoena before it could be issued. That's an extraordinary, unique provision in the history of the country constitutionally, to show the kind of unanimity of support inside the government to demand that information be revealed to Congress. That's technically what the provision was, and that's the provision that was taken out by the House. They didn't want any such subpoena power to exist at all.
And it's been quite a long time now, I think, since there was a mention that David Grush was coming out with an op-ed. Is that still on the table?
I'm not at liberty to discuss that from my discussions with
Okay.
David.
Can you say anything about Lua Lozando's upcoming book?
Yes. I don't mean to sound like a lawyer. That's like saying, in a deposition, you say, do you know what time it is? The answer is yes.
Yeah. What can you say about Lou's upcoming book? I mean,
I can tell you it's coming out. It's coming out in the middle of August, and that he is going to be having a major book tour that is going to be financed by the publishing company, and that there are going to be numerous gatherings and discussions and stuff surrounding basically each one of his appearances throughout the country, with people from the public being invited to come and have additional presentations made, information shared with them, and inviting them to become part of the Citizens for Disclosure. That is a major movement that the New Paradigm Institute is sponsoring. We're going to have groups of citizens in each one of the 435 congressional districts who are going to be the Citizens for Disclosure rather, and they're going to be writing letters and sending communications to their respective congresspersons and to their United States senators. They're going to be going to the local newspapers and proposing letters to the editor in support of the passage by the House of the Senate bill, in support of this controlled disclosure campaign that is being proposed by the United States Senate. That they're going to be going to their local Kiwanis clubs, American Legion posts, that they're Rotary clubs, going to the local high schools and proposing school assemblies at which people can present the information that is undisputed, that is causing such a legitimate stir, at least among the people in the know, about the process that's going on right now, which is functionally the disclosure process is sort of underway, that the Senate is on board for it, the president is on board for it, and that we're just getting a pushback from the private aerospace corporations and from the deep state, from the legacy group of people buried deep within the intelligence agencies, in military agencies somewhere.
And I mean, do you think Lou's book is going to clarify things that people have been wondering? Is it going to be revelatory?
Well, I'm not at liberty to talk about what's in the book.
Right. I mean, okay. And speaking of the UFO legacy group, is there support or cooperation, other than the whistleblowers, say, within those groups that are willing to cooperate with the controlled disclosure?
Well, by definition, at the present time, until such time as a mechanism has been set up to actually provide the necessary protection to the people who want to come forward, we have approximately 40 people who have come forward and who have provided their information under oath to the Senate Intelligence Committee. They have that information, they have that testimony already. That it's clear that if in fact the Senate bill is passed by the House, that the panel will be set up and that the panel will have the clearances necessary to interview all of these people. And if in fact the provisions that we have drafted at the New Paradigm Institute and are providing to both to the Senate and to the House are implemented, that they will contain not only protection of the whistleblowers, but they'll contain aspects of immunity that are given under strict guidelines to certain individuals that may be part of the legacy group that will protect them against criminal prosecution for some of their past deeds that would be necessary in order to get them to testify. So that there's two groups of people in the intelligence community and in the military. Some of them who want to come forward, who need protection against retaliation for their coming forward, and there are people who do not yet want to come forward, who have information, who are going to have to be subpoenaed and are going to have to be provided either use immunity or transactional immunity to protect them against any future criminal prosecution. Both of those groups are addressed in the legislation that the New Paradigm Institute has been asked to prepare.
Yeah. So we've been talking about controlled disclosure. What does catastrophic disclosure look like?
Well, I can tell you what it looks like. What catastrophic disclosure is, at least as it's being referred to by people in the legacy group, it's the kind of immediate dumping of all of the.
Wait, I'm sorry. What do you mean being referred to by people within the UFO legacy group?
That they're asserting that
They're calling it that?
pardon?
They're calling it catastrophic disclosure?
Yes, that's where it comes from. That's where the term comes from. That's their language. They're saying that the immediate disclosure of all of the information that is in the possession of the United States government about the UFO phenomenon and the extraterrestrial civilization, if it were all made immediately available to the public, that it would be catastrophic. That's their term.
You think that they're just like they're bluffing, or do you think they actually believe that, or are they just using that as a ploy? And
well, that kind of covers the range. I would say, as I've said in the past, I have direct experience with regard to this. That I was one of the principal attorneys for the New York Times in making the decision to publish the Pentagon Papers, and when the Nixon administration made its move to get an injunction from the federal district court in New York prohibiting us from continuing the publication of those papers, Whitney North Seymour, who was the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, representing the Nixon administration, came to the court and said that these 47 volumes, if they were made available to the public, it would irrevocably damage the national security of the United States. And that's like saying it would be catastrophic. And so I said in chambers, I said, like what? He said, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to tell you what it is because you don't have the adequate security clearances. At which point the Judge Murray Gerfine said to him, well, how about the court, Mr. Seymour? I mean, I take it you're willing to tell the court what you are asserting would be catastrophic or irrevocably damaging the national security of the United States if you're seeking an injunction from us. And Whitney North Seymour said, no, no, we're not going to tell you either, because you don't have the adequate security clearances. Now, one would have assumed that that would have been the end of it, since the government had the burden of proof in trying to get an injunction against the New York Times, but they were not willing to come forward and to tell what would be so catastrophic about it. The fact is, we published all 47 volumes. Actually, we didn't publish all of it. But all the stuff that was published didn't have any catastrophic consequences at all. And later on, some of the stuff that wasn't published, that the board of editors decided not to publish, some of it came out later in the church committee hearings, about the assassination program and stuff that they had operating in Southeast Asia, the Phoenix program. Some of the stuff never did come out. I mean, until later, all about the drug smuggling, the massive heroin smuggling that the CIA was engaged in, that was being run by the CIA station chief in Saigon. But even then, all the information hasn't come out. I mean, there's lots of information that the New York Times knows about and that I know about that has virtually never been made public.
I don't know if you have any kind of idea, but do you think that, say, that the people from these UFO legacy programs that are saying that disclosure would be catastrophic if it was just immediately released?
Yes.
Do you think that they're saying that because of non-human intelligences and what they are, what they may be, what they are, what their technology is? Or do you think that they're saying that because of acts that the United States has taken, in, things that the intelligence community has done, as far as retaliation against whistleblowers, psychological warfare against the American public, and a host of other things?
Yes. The answer is yes. Your question, they've actually posed hypothetical responses to the demand that I've made of, like, what are you talking about? And they will say things like, well, number one, that it would be a threat to the present, or they refer to as elements of power in the world, the economic structures, the political structures, the elite governing class of people on the planet, that the revelation of this information would dramatically undermine the authority of the present elements of power. And they also have hypothesized that there may well have been acts committed in the service of keeping secret this most secret of all so-called national security secrets, that people may well have been murdered to silence them. That's another hypothetical that they've set forth. They've set forth hypotheticals such as that, there could well have been theoretically some treaties or agreements entered into on behalf of the human family by this deep state, by the so-called legacy group people, without any constitutional authority to have done so, to have entered into some sort of agreements with the elements of the extraterrestrial civilization in exchange for some benefits that have allegedly flowed to the legacy group. So that they have, when pressed, have hypothesized a number of different deep concerns that they have that they would view to be catastrophic. But they've not confirmed any of those.
On top of that, has there been any discussion about the military abductions, that kind of thing? My labs.
In my conversations with a number of them, they've never mentioned the My Labs thing specifically. Though the My Labs thing has been happening. You know, that I have no doubt, based on people that I've talked to directly, that there have been military abductions of American citizens.
Posing as UFO intelligence?
Well, not only no, posing as UFO intelligence, no, posing as UFO people.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but the fact of the matter is that some of them have actually, I've talked with a number of the people that have been subjected to such a MILABS abduction, and they purport to have being able to remember being in the presence of U.S. military personnel after they've been abducted and UFO beings at the same time, acting in concert.
And do you think that's part of the agreement issue?
I don't speculate about whether that's part of their hypothesized agreement, because
Okay.
they've never been clear about what they might suggest would be the content of those agreements.
Right. And yeah, that's something I've wondered too. Of course, in UFO history or lore, whatever you want to call it, there's speculation as to what those agreements may have been. I don't know the validity of it.
No,
Uh,
they say that the because of the unconstitutional degree of secrecy that has been exercised regarding this particular set of subjects, the speculation has been rampant, to say the least. In the 47 years that I've been directly involved in various official positions of being general counsel to the Disclosure Project, legal counsel to Lou Elizondo, legal counsel for John Mack, et cetera. That the information that I have gotten has caused me to believe that the legacy group deems itself to be somehow not authorized constitutionally, but somehow allowed to get away with doing things that are just transparently unconstitutional. And there has to be a reckoning with that, and that has to be stopped right now. And there's going to have to be consequences for the unconstitutional conduct that's been undertaken in the past in order to deter it happening again in the future. Those are all things that are presently being addressed by the New Paradigm Institute that is attempting to identify this new regime, the new paradigm that's going to have to be made operational pursuant to the legislation that's being passed by Congress and the executive orders that are going to be issued by the probably the next president. Because all of this is going to come to a major resolution of some kind pretty much in the next administration.
and do you think that there's any validity to the claim that that let's say this UFO legacy group has been targeting UFOs to down them?
I do.
Right. And yeah, I guess that's part of the whole crash retrieval aspect.
Yeah, right, right. It's not exactly retrieval.
Yeah, and yeah, some cases they say that crashed and or landed was a statement that I heard from both Dr. Eric Davis and David Grush.
Mm-hmm.
In the cases where the craft seemed to be completely intact.
That's right. Well, that is true. They're in possession of at least two craft that are completely intact and operational.
And and that gets me to thinking about what Dr. James Lukatsky
Mm-hmm.
had disclosed in the book with George Knapp and Colum Kelleher, Initial Revelations, which they released, I believe, is last year.
Yes.
That and yeah, it's so funny. It's such an interesting note that was overlooked, and it was pointed out to me by Grant Cameron. Was that it's so easy to overlook because we're thinking about this craft, but James Lukatsky says in the book that he was in a meeting with a U.S. senator was present. While they're talking about this completely intact craft. So that would mean that some U.S. senator was briefed in on that.
That would be Harry Reid.
Correct, and unfortunately, since he's passed,
yes,
and that's something that he was not able to speak to himself directly, at least. But it would make sense. That's why he took this so seriously.
Yeah, that's right. No, that is true.
Because
and then you could be quite sure that Senator Reid shared that with Senator Stevens, Ted Stevens, and with Dan Inouye.
Right.
That Harry Reid shared that direct knowledge with them.
Yeah, and and that's that brings us around to today, I guess, with if you had, it's different than if you have fragments that are anomalous and if you have an entire craft.
Yeah, that's different. You're right.
And presumably entities.
Yes. Not presumably, definitely
entities, right? Non-human entities.
That's right.
What did you ever hear of how many different types of entities there were?
Yes.
Is there a number you can give me?
That my best understanding is that there are at least five different species that are presumed to be from different actual star systems.
And did any of those entities, can you descript any of them from what you heard? Or didn't?
The obvious ones, the ones that get most the coverage are the little 3.5 foot tall, grays, with the large domed heads and the wraparound eyes, etc. 3 fingers, the long arms. But there's also and it's not entirely clear whether it's a different species or some different function of the same species, but there are the tall grays are, anywhere between 5.5 feet tall to 6 feet tall. But they look exactly alike. It's just that they're much taller. And then there are the reptilians. This is a species that has apparently gone through an evolutionary cycle, not entirely distinct from that of our human species. That obviously, if one credits the theory that our human species has evolved up out of the initial single cell life forms on our planet that are generated quite naturally by our planet itself, and that we've evolved teleologically up to the point where we have, that we came through a phase where life on our planet was in a reptilian form. And in fact, each of us present human beings, human beings go through a gestation process in the womb of our mothers, where we are in a more or less reptilian form with gills and tail and the whole 9 yards. And so that there appears to be one of these species from a different planet who went through a very similar evolutionary process, but they, at the reptilian stage, rather than branching off and generating brontosauruses and tyrannosauruses and other forms of dinosaurs, actually generated a species that's analogous to the mammals on our planet, that the mammalian species evolved teleologically through the apes and others into humans. That the process that took place on their planet kind of branched off the reptilian phase of this similar biological evolution, and they've become fully sentient and intelligent and highly technologically developed. There are direct eyewitness accounts of direct face-to-face encounters with such beings, who are like 6 feet tall and very large and muscular, but in fact not at all threatening, like one might necessarily associate with the reptilian image here in our human family. but that the reports are that they're really quite benign and positive and friendly, that particular species. And then there is the so-called insectoid species that is very tall, like over 6 feet tall, 7 feet tall, and very, very thin, very skinny and spindly, kind of hunched over, and they give people the impression of like a praying mantis. They're referred to as the mantis species. And that when these mantis people have been seen in the presence of any of the other species, they seem to be in charge. And this is even true when they're seen in the presence of other U.S. military personnel, that the mantis beings appear to be in charge. That's one of the characteristics of them. And then, of course, there's the other one, the issue that is still highly problematic about there being an actual species that is human.
Right.
This is the so-called the Billy Myers theory that other people, the Palladians, that are in fact identical virtually to human beings, Homo sapiens, that except that they tend to be predominantly blonde-haired and blue-eyed, with just a little larger earlobes. It's very suspicious. That is a highly suspicious set of data, because that would throw the entire analysis of everything into a kind of a cocked hat, that we wouldn't be dealing with just a non-human extraterrestrial civilization. We'd be dealing with some sort of a precursor species that would actually have somehow potentially intervened in the evolutionary process on our planet, to plant their species here. And so at the present time, our New Paradigm Institute, which has been designated in the Senate bill as the citizen group to be authorized to make nominations to the panel of the president to develop the policies for this disclosure. The references to the UAP Disclosure Foundation that was put in to refer to our New Paradigm Institute, and that we are in process of trying to analyze all this information from a completely independent, citizen-based perspective, and that this other fifth, if you will, species of alleged extraterrestrials is sort of almost in a separate category from the others, the small grays, the tall grays, the reptilians, and the insect,
yeah.
or whatever it is, the other people they talk about, the mantis people, but they're all sentient, highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, very sophisticated,
and
and they have a striking similarity to our species. They're bipeds. They have 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, a torso, body. Arms, fingers. It's quite extraordinary, actually, and very important to. We're not talking about big globs of protoplasm somehow creeping around that. There's nothing like that. All those are subject of sort of 1950s science fiction movies, and horror stories. But there's that all of the species that have been referred to in intelligent and well-informed conversations are these people that are really quite humanoid in their appearance.
Does each group have? Does it seem like they have their own set of technology, or is it across the board the same?
No, they're different. There seem to be different technologies. There are a variety of these type of craft that they display some of the same common characteristics. the superluminal travel, the anti-gravity characteristics, et cetera, that they have. But some of them are very different than others. The ability that they look like actually kind of by globular. They're kind of plasma vehicles of some sort. Like for example, the one that appeared over the U.S. military missile site in 1967, the Maelstrom base. That was like a large orange kind of gelatinous type structure that came up over the missile site and shut off all 10 of the missiles there. Others, for example, the one that I saw in the classified portion of the Project Blue Book, it was a classic saucer, probably 30, 40 meters wide, with the classic dome on the top of it, with actual symbols, along the bottom of the dome. That was a very specific craft that I saw. And then there are extraordinarily credible videos and photographs of a variety of different kind of craft that have some of these common features of superluminal travel and anti-gravitational effect and all these other characteristics that have been identified. But they seem to be associated with different species.
And among the UFO legacy group, is the idea of non-human intelligence walking among us taken seriously?
Oh yes, yes, it is taken very seriously. They don't want to talk about it. I mean, they're doing everything in their power right now. Of course, they're trying to keep any of it from being credited at all. But what they're doing is they've definitely sectioned off the discussion about the UFO vehicles and the technology that's involved. That's all that even the people that want to have controlled disclosure, that's the part that they seem to be inclined to be willing to allow to be made public. That these kind of vehicles are around, here are the kind of characteristics they have. But when you turn to start talking about the actual people piloting the craft and where they come from and what their agenda is, they immediately stop talking. They don't want to talk about that at all.
And I mean, it's almost I don't know. Egotistical is maybe not the right word, but the people that hold this information or gatekeep this information, the idea that they think that they control the destiny of basically everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They presume that, what what are they to think about the idea of something like CE5, right, where individuals can override their cover up, so to speak, and have individual disclosure and can actually initiate interactions with non-human intelligence.
Well, in short, they view that as entirely irresponsible.
Of course they do.
They view themselves as being the only legitimate responsible party to have any kind of contact with this extraterrestrial civilization. I mean, it's just a subset or an additional layer of their hubris. I mean, there is this national security state element that has evolved in our country since the passage of the National Security Act of 1947 that have taken unto themselves all kinds of presumptions of their unique authority to be engaged in making policy. We saw it come to the surface in the Iran-Contra case, where people like Oliver North and, more importantly, Theodore Shackley, who was the ADDO, the agency, the Associate Deputy Director for Operations of the agency under George Bush, when Bush was the CIA director, the Theodore Shackley, they presumed that they were not only authorized, to make all the decisions in the area of foreign policy. And they held in disdain the people in the State Department. They held in disdain the people in the Congress. And they held in disdain any of the executive branch agents and Secretary of Defense and people who tried to regulate them. They thought that they were the government of the United States, and all these other people were just kind of, passers through. They were temporary employees of some kind, and that they held them in virtual disdain. I mean, I engaged with them. I talked to them. I interviewed them. I took their depositions. I was able to, Oliver North, with whom I got along fine, actually maintained that, that while the United States House of Representatives, per the Constitution, was the sole source of authorized spending on the part of any government programs, that they actually, he and Poindexter, John Poindexter, Admiral Poindexter, who was his direct supervisor and had the national security advisor for President Reagan, actually took the position that they had the authority to, as long as they could go get the money somewhere else, that they could undertake any kind of foreign policy or military operations that they chose to do, and they were not subject to the control of the Congress, and they weren't even subject to the control of presidents with whom they disagreed. And nothing was effectively done about it. Virtually none of them. One person, went to prison, or got any kind of jail time, was Tom Clines, and that was solely for his failure to pay the income tax on a gift that he was given, a security fence, around his home. That's how irresponsible the Congress of the United States has been up to this point in time, to rein in this national security state. And so what we see coming to the fore here in around this issue of the UFO disclosure is having to come to grips with the kind of the level of hubris that has evolved over the last 77 years, by the national security state, of garnering unto themselves this type of authority to go so far as is to not only conceal information about the existence of an extraterrestrial civilization, from all the people, but to keep a secret from Congress, and to lie to Congress, actively lie to Congress, denying that they know about it, and that somehow they've garnered unto themselves the authority to have whatever relationship we're going to have with this extraterrestrial civilization, that they're the ones that are allowed to make the decisions as to what that's going to be. That's gone way beyond the pale, way beyond the pale. And something has to be done about this. And so I think that the uniformity of support that we have across the entire political spectrum, across all different genders, all different ethnic groups, everybody, is demanding to have this information turned over to Congress now, so that we can find out what's going on here. And so that this provides an additional important opportunity for our people to come to grips with this national security state. One would have assumed that with the voluntary dissolution of the Soviet Union on December 31st of 1991 by President Gorbachev, that there would have been a major impetus to disassemble this national security state that had been created solely and exclusively on the basis of the rationale that it was necessary for us to resort to such a national security state apparatus to protect ourselves against potential world domination by the Soviet Union. But the instant that those of us who were involved in the conversations with President Gorbachev, who we were, we were engaged in these direct communications with him through the Jesuit national headquarters here in the United States, to persuade him to dissolve the Soviet Union, to disassemble the nuclear warheads of their arsenal. So we were involved in those such conversations. But as soon as he was persuaded to do that, it turns out that the George Bush Sr. administration, especially the Defense Department that was under Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of Defense, He and his deputy, Paul Wolfowitz, and Doug Fife, and Scooter Libby, and that whole crowd, the Vulcans, as they're known as, that they formulated a response to the dissolution of the Soviet Union to try to increase the military budget for themselves, and to establish, in their own words, full spectrum military dominance over the whole planet, masquerading as a requirement of our national security. That's what we're dealing with here, and so that we're going to have to come to grips with this, and in light of the I guess what you could say is flexibility or fluidity of all of our institutions, our geopolitical institutions, our domestic political institutions, our economic institutions, that is going to come about by the engagement with this extraterrestrial civilization, the members of which could be as much as 8 to 10 billion years, further developed than we are in regard to all of these different areas. In light of the kind of fluidity that might be engendered by the encounter with UFO people, we have to make adjustments in our geopolitical structures, in our own domestic political structures, and our economic structures that are much more just, that are much more equal and fair to all the people on our planet, which they have not been willing to do. This elite that govern the national security state are coincident with the elite that govern on the planet and believe that they're in charge. This tiny 1%. We're talking here about 1% of the 1%, who basically feel that they're applying their trade on behalf of the interests of this 1%. And that what we have to do is we have to have a much more just and equal partnership on the part of all of our people of our planet in helping to make these decisions. And Congress is the present body that per our Constitution is authorized to serve in that role. But we need to step forward. We need to organize as citizens. We need to organize to make our views felt and expressed to these representatives. And if they do not implement our collective judgment about how we should deal with this extraterrestrial civilization, then we're going to have to replace them, with members who are willing to bring the entire human family into the decision-making process that has to be undertaken here.
And just as a final question, what do you think people can expect for the duration of the year on the disclosure front and process?
For the duration of this year, everybody starting tonight, basically, the 7 o'clock Eastern time or 9 o'clock Eastern time, everybody's going to be just talking about the election, so that everything falls into the kind of context of this election. But I think that the momentum is already underway for the crafting of what I've pointed out is the Schumer-Rounds Bill 2.0 coming out of the Senate, with some increased language that's still to be formulated to go into that. And I believe that there's going to be one more hearing, a public hearing, almost certainly in the Senate, that is going to accompany the finalization of all that language as the impetus for the momentum going into the House of Representatives. There's going to be a major campaign mounted through the New Paradigm Institute in all 435 congressional districts to try to effectuate the endorsement of the Senate bill. And we would hope that by the election in the first week of November, that this would be a prominent issue that is going to have to be addressed by the next administration, so that the real progress is going to be signaled by December 22nd, basically, of this year, of how this resolution of this issue is formulated. And the assignment will be given by the Congress, this present Congress, to the next Congress and to the next executive administration. It'll be in place from 2025 through 2028. That's the administration that's going to have to basically come to grips with this and bring it to a resolution to instigate and initiate a meaningful disclosure. And that's going to be taking place during the next administration.
And the links are going to be in the description, but where could people find your work at the New Paradigm Institute?
Yeah, it's easy. newparadigminstitute.org. Okay, newparadigminstitute.org. And there's also the Twitter. We have the Twitter account. We have a Twitter account for both our Romero Institute, which is the overarching 501c3 public interest legal organization that is the sponsor of the New Paradigm Institute. But newparadigminstitute.org is where you want to go, and you want to check the Twitter for New Paradigm Institute. Those are the two major places. And you can get all the information about the 8 different major missions that we're engaged in that include not only the drafting of the legislation, but the actual representing of whistleblowers, legally representing them, mobilizing the citizenry to write the letters to their congressmen and senators, and the formulation of a new paradigm. That's going to be extraordinarily important. The actual formulation of what kind of alternative structures we need to have economically, politically, and geopolitically to accommodate this larger reality that we've been in denial about for the last 80 years.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Daniel. We greatly appreciate it. And we look forward to your initiatives with the New Paradigm Institute and look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Keep up the great work.
Terrific. Thank you, Jim.
Right.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
everybody. Please just get in touch with us. newparadigminstitute.org. Get on board with the Citizens for Disclosure.
All right. Take care.